Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Haney. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
Is K-Rahn Vallatine. He's a successful author, curriculum course developer, and training consultant. The depth of his knowledge combined with his interesting life experiences and storytelling makes every event that he leads meaningful and entertaining. He's executive director of Live Above the Hype, an entertainment nonprofit company that supports the personal development of youth and young adults, and the professional development of educators, service providers, leaders, and other corporate staff. Keron has a profound ability to facilitate conversations on complex and uncomfortable topics by delivering content that is organized intentionally to create dialogue with interactive and self-reflective activities that create more understanding, empathy, self-awareness, group awareness, and emotional intelligence. We welcome him to the podcast. Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. How you doing, K-Rahn?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Good to have you on. I want to dive right in. So I'm going to get a chance to get to know you a little better. I'm going to ask you my favorite question of all my guests. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is you have what it takes. Give yourself permission to be great.
I like that.
That's the best advice I ever received, because up until I heard that, I always felt, even though I had gifts and talents and vision and all kinds of things, I always felt I had to hide it under somebody else. I had to be co-signed by somebody else. I had to be validated by somebody else, until the sister told me, she said, Keron, you're it. You have it. You know, give yourself permission to be great and just do it. You don't need to continue to, simmer down your light and hide under somebody else, So I would say that was the best advice I ever got.
I love that.
Yeah.
All of us have had people in our lives who have served to inspire us, be mentors for us. Who are some people in your life you want to kind of give a shout out to that have been that critical in your development?
I want to give a shout out to my high school counselor, who has not seen me since high school, Miss Ramsey, because, I don't even know if Miss Ramsey's alive. I talk about her in my books and everything. She saw past a lot of the social barriers at the time. At the time, I was a very disengaged young man. I fit the profile of a lot of the stereotypes. And she saw past all of that and spoke past all of that and spoke to who I am and put her work in. So I would definitely say Miss Ramsey. Of course, my mom. My mom was and is a strong support system in my life. And a lot of my mentors have come from people I have not met.
Okay.
Meaning, it's been through social media or YouTube or the books I've read. It's John Henry Clark. It may be Napoleon Hill. All of these people I consider my mentors, because they left so many nuggets through their work for people like me to follow through and pick up the breadcrumbs.
I love that. Yeah, those people do kind of serve to give us inspiration, to show us their journey and show us what could be, where we could end up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I want to dig in a little deeper now. Tell us your personal story.
My personal story. What part? Like what aspect?
Whatever part you want to pick. Leave it up to you.
My personal story is I was a young man growing up I have a book called Beyond the Crack Generation. So I'll start with that. Growing up in the crack epidemic, in a culture that was very counterproductive, So during this time, it's the 80s and 90s, young Black male growing up in a time where society, particularly entertainment and the culture, created these false narratives of what a young Black male should be. And I believed a lot of that stuff. I believed that manhood was about being, again, counterproductive, destructive. All of these destructive factors was what manhood was about. And I believe that. And I got blessed. Miss Ramsey's, helped me get into college. And when I got to college, I was in a whole nother environment. And everywhere you go, there you are. So I took myself with me. And I still had a way of gravitating to the nonsense, even in a college setting, until I got hold of some information. Particularly in my case, it was Black history and Black empowerment and just positive imagery of myself. And I came to the conclusion that I'm a part of the problem. And I remember looking around. I was in college, looking around like, you don't have nobody to blame. You got everything is right here. All the stuff that you claim is the problem, they're not here. None of that is here. You have the opportunity to do whatever you want. And here you are still finding yourself in the same situations because you are part of the problem, K-Rahn. You know what I'm saying? I can have nobody to blame. And then when that light bulb went off, I said, I want to be a part of the solution. And at that point, I started to read like a madman. I started to become a scholar and I started to figure out what can I do to be a part of the solution. So, I started to separate myself from some of the behaviors and circles that I had found myself around. And I became a hermit for a minute because I just really wanted to redefine who I am, rediscover who I am. And with that being said, I wanted to, as I started to get older, I wanted to become a teacher. So I became a teacher because I wanted to go back and teach other young Black males and young Black females the same thing that I was learning. And I didn't want to have to go through this long process before the light bulb moment came. So I became a teacher and I taught for 5 years, middle school. And then I wanted to impact my community in a deeper way. So I started to work with young incarcerated young men in Los Angeles, young ladies too, as well, but mostly young men. So I worked with incarcerated young men for about 10 years. And in that process of while I was doing that, I also started to create tools. I started to create curriculums, life skills curriculums, things that really spoke to my younger self, things that I felt I would need. I grew up in the just say no era, but just say no did not help. It made no impact. You know what I'm saying? Just say no. The police coming through telling me how stupid drugs are, why they terror. Anyway, it just didn't. It didn't. So I wanted to figure out what could I do. What did I need to hear? So I created a curriculum called Live Above the Hype, which really was about what it says, helping our young people live above this hype so they don't self-sabotage and things of that nature. And with that, and then I ended up becoming an author and writing books and, all of these things and doing trainings and all the stuff that I do today. But with all that being said, my story is I'm a young man at the time, a young man who was very disengaged and caught up in the hype, who wanted to be a part of the solution and left myself no excuses to be a part of the solution. So creating books, creating tools with no backing, just doing it. And I encourage others to do the same.
So you're telling me that commercial, this is your brain on drugs, didn't help?
That didn't help at all. That did nothing, absolutely nothing. When I got access to all the nonsense, I was gone. You know what I'm saying? It did not help. The egg and the skillet.
Egg and the skillet didn't help. I know. Okay. Let's dig in a little bit more because a lot of audience don't understand. I may not understand the crack generation. So kind of give us some perspective for those who are hearing that going, that's a nice title. I don't necessarily get it. So what is that crack generation? What does that look like for people who lived in that generation?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And I would start off by saying during the crack epidemic, again, the 80s and 90s in particular, it wasn't everybody was strung out on crack. You know, it wasn't everybody was selling dope, you know. So let's first of all shatter that narrative. You know, everybody wasn't crack dealers and crack addicts. It was a very small percentage, but that small percentage was very concentrated. You know what I'm saying? And very influential. So I say all that to say, during this epidemic, the crack era was very detrimental to the community as a whole. And what I mean by that is because particular during this time, this is where, because I work with youth a lot, like I shared. This people want to know what happened. This is the time when a lot of the generational rankings flipped, where people say, what happened? How did we lose our youth? Because during this time, the crack business, and I got to call it a business, unlike any other drug trade, was a kid's business. It was a child's drug trade. You know, if you look at old mob movies and, you know, gangster movies, remember the kid had, before he could be a part of the mob or whatever, he had to be a runner. He had to go run and get a sandwich and go do all of these things and work his way up. During the crack epidemic, it was none of that. All you needed was $20. If you had $20, you could get in the drug business. So you could be a 12-year-old kid who has aspirations of being a dentist or a doctor and has absolutely no criminal ties at all, you know. But you live in this environment and you're growing up around people who may be making money off this. So you're 12, 13 years old. You're seeing the 14-year-old who is in the drug business making, you know, wads like this of money, you know, and I'm simplifying it. But that 12-year-old says, how are you making that money? He says, all you need is $20 to get you a double up, you know, because it was wholesale. And I'm not going to go all into the business part of it.
Sure.
But we live in a capitalist society. So, you know, as I go back before I finish that story, every child has asked their mom, why do I need to go to school? Son, you need to go to school to get an education. Why do I need to get a good education? To get a good job. Why do I need to get a good job? To get money. Oh, well, my neighbor right here just told me a quicker way to get money. I could save myself, you know, the rest, you know, 6 years of school, right?
Right.
Because that's what you told me. It's just about getting money. So going back to the story, you know, a 12-year-old, 13-year-old could get in the drug trade so easy. Now, the challenge with that is the drug trade that we're talking about, which is the crack, is a kid's business. So the kids are selling it. But unfortunately, it's the adults that are smoking it. So now you got this 12, 13-year-old kid who's on the block for, you know, X amount of hours with these adults who are willing to do almost anything for this little tiny piece of crack rock. And this kid has a whole pocket full of them.
Right.
So what it's doing is flipping the psyche, you know, and I say all of this to try to take the shame out of it, because no disrespect to the drug addict either, because I believe it was chemical warfare on our community, you know. So with that being said, that's happening. So that's what's going on in the community. And that's starting to create a youth culture that is very disrespectful to elders, because now we have what I call adultless communities, because adults, you know, even though we had grown folks, but adults' job is to provide, protect, and teach. If I'm the crack dealer and I'm making, you know, fistloads of money, you're not providing the way I'm providing.
Right.
You're not teaching me what I'm interested in learning. And you can't protect me for the wilderness, the streets out here. So at this point, we're fending for ourselves. So it's creating this culture, this youth culture, you know, that's actually detrimental, and we're actually feeding off our own death. Right.
Right.
So I'll stop right there as far as the community part of it. But at the same time, it's like the perfect storm. You got millions and millions of dollars being pumped into the entertainment business, which is also, you know, fascinated by this lifestyle.
Right.
So where you had a few people that was telling the story, like NWA, like with Dope Man and all of that type of stuff, they was telling the story and it was more reality rap. People said, oh, no, there's something about this narrative. We need more people who can tell this story. We don't want the public enemies and stuff no more. We want people who can tell this story. We want more dope men. So more money is being put into whoever can talk about the dope, whoever can talk about pimping, whoever can talk about all of the activities that's going on in this counterculture. Right. And then it's on the big screen. All that's going on during this crack era, this crack epidemic. You see what I'm saying? So it's not just about the crack dealer. It's a whole storm going on at the same time that created a culture and created a mindset that many of us are still recovering from.
I mean, I think about one of the most popular movies during that time, Boys in the Hood. I mean, that was an all of a whole drug movie. It was like one of the biggest hits in our community.
Yes. And the beauty of Boys in the Hood, unlike most of the others, because you got Boys in the Hood and then you have Menace to Society. You remember Menace to Society?
Yeah.
Very similar to Boys in the Hood. The beauty about Boys in the Hood is they had various styles in there.
Right.
They had the conscious black man to counteract some of the activity that was going on and explain some of these things that was going on. Where most of us grew up without various styles. So we didn't have anybody to give us any context of what was going on. We were just like, this is life. Nobody could put the pieces together for us.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for those who understand, I think you kind of helped us understand a little bit too, for those who are listening, about the hype. So as you work with young people, how do you get them to look beyond, like you said, living beyond that hype and realize that lifestyle that you're aiming for or shooting for is kind of a dead end and there is something better? How do you get to that next level to get out of that circular mindset of destruction?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And now a word from one of our sponsors, For Freedom Mobile. If you're using AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, then you're being tracked. Mobile providers collect your location, communications, internet activity, even your financial transaction. They sell that data to anyone willing to pay for it and provide it to the government without a warrant. Switch to For Freedom Mobile, and you won't ever have to worry about big tech or Big Brother tracking you through your mobile phone again. For Freedom Mobile provides secure, unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data for just $29.99 a month, and it includes free internet roaming in over 200 countries. Sign up for the service by visiting forfreedommobile.com and using the promo code BridgeBuilders to get your first month for only $9.99. See forfreedommobile.com for details, just like the number 4, freedommobile.com.
Yeah, well, the first piece is helping them to understand their self-worth. Because a lot of times young men and young ladies, unfortunately, in these environments have low self-worth for a lot of different reasons. So they already don't think their life is worth much. So, in order to find value in my life, I need to find it through materialism and money and all of this type of stuff. First, we have to build up their self-worth and let them know you are great just because of who you are, regardless of what's in your pocket. First, because your worth is not defined by this material stuff. That's the first thing. And then once they start to understand that they have self-worth, then they're less urgent. I mean, they're less, they're not as quick to throw away their life. Because without self-worth, I could tell you all day about the consequences and all of the different things that come with the lifestyle, but it's like, who cares anyway? I'm not really worth nothing anyway, so I might as well try it. So we start with self-worth. And then we start to help them critically think about the lifestyles, the decisions they're making. Like one of the questions I ask is, because I never tell a young man or a young lady who's involved in certain lifestyles to stop, because I don't really know their story. Most stories are a lot more complicated than what we say or what we think. If a young man is gang involved, I can't just say, hey, just walk away from the gang. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
I wish it did, but it don't work like that. The streets don't work like that. So I can't say, hey, just stop. But what I can help them do, I can say, is the life that you're living right now, is it going to lead you to the life that you really want? This. You're not in the 80s or 90s. So you've had plenty of opportunity to see previous generations and see how this story ends. See, in the 80s and 90s, the other part about that story is we didn't know how it ended. We thought we found the magic pill. We thought we found the Jack and the Beanstalk. We found it. We got 30, 40 years of examples to see how this ends. So I asked them, how this is going to end? Is this going to lead you to what you want? And if they say no, then we say, let's figure out a plan on how we're going to get you there. It's not going to happen overnight. Your change is not going to happen overnight, but we can figure out how to get you there. But it starts with helping them value themselves, and really building that self-image.
I used to work we had a school as part of our church. And I remember asking the kids in the class one day, what do you want to be when you grow up? And one girl in the class said she wanted to be a CSI detective, who worked with the crime units and all that, because she saw that show and loved that. The one that broke my heart was a young lady who said, I just want to be a video dancer because that's the best thing I can do growing up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, there's got to be so much more to your life than being a video dancer.
And the thing about video dancers, so it comes about, what does she value?
Right.
What does she probably see in the video dance? Okay, they're getting love. Now, obviously, it's fake love, but they're getting a certain amount of love and attention. They're getting money. They're not getting money. We know that. Like, video dancers don't get money, but it looks like she's getting money. She's getting love. She's getting a certain amount of fame. She's getting access to certain lifestyles. That's what it looks like, right? So in her head, okay, this is probably the best way to get a lot of that stuff that I want, right? Very similar to the young man who wants to be the dope dealer, right? But contrary to popular belief, people always talk about fast money. But most dope dealers are not rich. You know what I'm saying? Most dope dealers don't grow. They're not rich. So let's even shatter that fast money narrative. It's not what you know what I'm saying? They're not Tony Montana and all of this. No, they're not. You know what I'm saying? But that's what's publicized, right? That's what's promoted. So like with that young lady, helping her with her self-worth, right? Do you really want to be that dancer? Or what is it about that dancer that you want? What did that dancer have that you want? And is there other ways to get that? Right? Because there's always just a means to an end. Right? Do you really want to be a dancer, or do you want what you think that dancer has? And if whatever you think she has, what's another route of getting that? Those are the type of questions I ask these young people.
Yeah. So let's talk about your curriculum, because I'm curious kind of how you help young people through it. So your curriculum is Live Above the Hype, Life Skills. So how do you encourage students to think about the impact of their current decisions will have on their life outcomes? So how do you facilitate that conversation?
Yeah, so that's exactly, I like the word language you use, because that's exactly what it is. It's a curriculum full of facilitated conversations, right? So for instance, again, I could think about how I thought. Everything that I, thought, it made sense to me because nobody walked me through the process. So like, for instance, I was speaking their language. A lot of them might like to gamble. So I asked them, if we were shooting dice, would you put down $1,000 and not put down $10? And we gamble, right?
Right.
Most of them will say, no, I wouldn't do that. I say, why not? Let's shoot dice. You put down 1,000, I'll put down 10. No, that's stupid. I say, why is it stupid? Because I'm putting down 1,000, you putting down 10. What's wrong with it? You're only putting down 10. I say, but you got a chance to win $10. So what's the point? Why not just put your $1,000 down? And then the light bulb, because I'm waiting for them to say it. The light bulb comes off. I have way more to lose than I have to gain in that bet.
Right.
Bingo. That's how these streets are. You got way more to lose than you have to gain in that bet. So you go and you do this crime, but look how much you have to lose. You know what I'm saying? Look how many people you hurting. Especially if you're over 18. Look at the time you have to serve. Look at all the, you know what I'm saying? I just help them critically think. You have way more to lose than you have to gain. Just like you wouldn't put that $1,000 down. Don't put that $1,000 down with your life, right? Because your life is worth way more than $1,000, right? You have way more to lose than you have to gain. So, it starts off like that. Then it progressively goes to actually success principles. But first we have to undo. We have to de-educate, have them critically think, because they have to start to think like, okay, wait, this doesn't make sense. Now, once they start to want to live above the hype, then we start to get into other principles. We start talking about college. We start talking about generational wealth. We start talking about, making decisions and following through. All of these type of things. It's that type of curriculum, just to really help them unpack and take them on a journey of critical thinking and assessing and analyzing the culture around them. I don't put a moral basis on anything. I don't use right or wrong, right?
Right.
Because depending on how you grew up or what your situation is, right and wrong morality gets very murky. So I won't tell them, don't do it just because it's wrong, but I will help them critically think about it. Those type of things.
So for those who see that community from the outside and misjudge so much about it, because I hear people say, well, why don't people just make better choices? You don't have to live like that. You could do something. What would you say to people who just don't really understand, I would say, the reality of the streets and the reality of people's situation who are stuck in those situations?
Yeah, that's a great one too. I just had a conversation not too long ago about free will, and I start my answer with this. So I share with them, because they say we all have free will. I share with them that free will is directly correlated with your awareness and your consciousness. Your will is only free as what you're aware of, right?
Right.
If I'm not even aware of certain things, I don't know what I don't know. So with that being said, like what I just brought up when I talked about this crack epidemic, instead of talking about the crack epidemic, so to speak, my focus shifts to the culture. And culture dictates morality a lot of times. So if you're growing up in a community, let's just say you're growing up in a community that values education, that values home ownership, that values generational wealth, that has a very kindred relationship with law enforcement, your morality is going to be a lot different than if you're in a community that is unfortunately in survival mode, does not have generational wealth, has a very adversarial relationship with law enforcement, right?
Right.
So you just using that as an example, using community A is the first one, community B is the second one. If I'm assaulted in community A, because that's the language we're going to use in community A, I'm assaulted, I may just very well call the police, right?
Right.
Why wouldn't I? To sit there and fight in the middle of the street or fight in school and all of that's actually going against my morals. It's like, why would you do that? Just call the police and let the police handle it. Community B, if I'm hit, if somebody socked me in the mouth and I call the police, that's a violation, right? Because first of all, how could you not fight back? That's the first thing. You don't hear about that. You could be in third grade. You'll hear about that till you 40 years old.
Right.
Remember that time you let that dude smack you in the mouth when we was 8? You will hear that for the rest of your life, right?
Right.
Let alone call the police, because we have had an adversarial relationship with law enforcement for centuries.
Right.
There's no way of explaining that away. We come into this country, with slavery and all of that type of stuff. So I use those two examples to understand that both of those have created a culture. And once you're in this culture creates social norms. Culture creates perspectives and beliefs. And once you have beliefs, now you have your paradigm. It's very hard to get out of a paradigm. It's very hard to get out of a set way of seeing the world. And when you're in these environments, depending on the environments that you're in and you're nurtured, that environment typically is going to, I'm going to use the word influence, but I need a stronger word, but it's going to mold. It's going to mold the way you see the world. And it's going to mold your behaviors and your decisions. And it's even going to mold your aspirations. And I'll share this last story real quick. I remember being in college when I told you I was in college. And I remember partying with some white guys, and we just partying, we having a good time and all of that. And they told me that they're going to study abroad. Now, I never heard of study abroad. My mind went somewhere else. Let's study abroad. Okay, tell me more. I don't know what this means, right? So they explained to me that studying abroad is they're under the school, but they're able to travel into another country and still be under the umbrella of the school. I said, wow, man, that's awesome. Man, when you get back, man, you let me know how that go. Not one time did it cross my mind that I could study abroad too. We're in the same school. Instead of me telling them to let me know how it is when you get back, what I should have said is let me know what office you went to so I could go to the same office and fill out the same forms so I can study abroad. But my self-identity, back to me talking about self-identity and self-image, my self-identity didn't even allow me to entertain that. This is what white people do in my head. Oh,
right.
Remember I said they white guys? This is white guys. This is white people stuff. Oh, y'all, oh, man, let me know how it go. It never crossed my mind that we're in the same school. So when people ask, like, you can just do this, we don't understand how much culture and self-image and self-limiting beliefs and all of these things weigh on the way we see the world. So you can put somebody in an environment and give them the opportunity, and they still may miss it if you don't help them with their self-image and help them process what they're seeing.
That's a good point. I remember when my son was in high school, and they would have these college preparatory meetings with the parents. And I'd go to those meetings with my son, and I was probably one of maybe 2 Black parents who were in that room with their kids. And the school kept asking me, where are the rest of the Black parents at? I'm like, well, I guarantee you none of them, I wouldn't say none of them, a lot of them didn't go to college. So they don't understand the process of what it takes to prepare your child to go to college. They don't understand that you start really as a freshman. If you don't start your kid as a freshman thinking about college, making the grades to go to college, to being in the right club so you have a bigger, portfolio, a bigger resume to present to a college, it doesn't cross most of their minds until senior year. By that time, you have wasted 3 years because you are not prepared. You haven't done your ACT, SAT. You haven't filled out paperwork. You haven't made campus visits. You are already 3 years behind your white counterparts because no one told you what the process was. I'm like, You have to actually get to the parents' freshman year and say, here is the process. If you want your child to go to college, let us help you figure out this process. When I went to college, I was the first one in my family. So my mom didn't tell me how to register in college. I had to go figure it out for myself. I had to do all of it, apply myself. It wasn't that she wasn't supportive. She didn't know what the process was. And so I had to learn all that on the ground myself. So when my kids went, I at least knew there was a process there.
Right. No, that's the perfect example, right? Again, we don't know what we don't know, right? And then the question becomes, what was those parents' relationship with school when they came up? What was their experience? So a lot of parents don't even want to deal with school, you know what I mean? And then there's that intimidation factor. Then it's like you say, I don't know what I don't know. And I don't want to come up there and I don't know, and now I feel, less than, and all of these things are going in a person's mind.
Right.
Absolutely. That's huge. That's huge right there.
As you think about this current generation, what is your greatest concern?
My greatest concern is their self-image. That is my greatest concern. I keep going back to that because talking about mentors and stuff, right? And mentors we never met. Bob Proctor said, no one operates beyond the boundaries of their own self-image. It says like a thermostat. If I set my thermostat to 72 degrees in my office right now, if it gets hotter than 72 degrees, the air is going to come on, cool this room back to 72. If it gets colder than 72, the heat is going to kick on, warm this room back up to 72. Self-image is the exact same way. So whoever we think we are, we're going to always bring ourselves back to that, even if it means self-sabotage. So I'm very concerned about who our young people think they are. Again, going back to our generation, who did we think we were? We thought we were many of the fictional characters that we heard in this music and in these movies. We were really aspiring to be what now I look as fictional characters, because these were creative minds creating these stories through music, creating these stories through movies. Yeah, it was based on reality, but they were fictional characters. You brought up Boys in the Hood. I wanted to be Doughboy. Doughboy's a fictional character. He may be based on some real life people, but he was a fictional character. Ice Cube, based, you see what I'm saying? So I'm very concerned about our young people's self-image and where they're drawing their self-image from. College, you're looking at college. A lot of young people aren't aspiring to go to college because their self-image is not aligned with college. Their self-image is the way the young lady with the wanted to be the dancer. Her self-image was aligned with that. You see what I'm saying? my self-image was aligned to wanting to be whoever I thought I wanted to be. So even when you give me these opportunities, I'm a squander it if it doesn't align with my self-image. So that's my biggest concern. And I'm still challenged by that. How do we help our young people develop a healthy self-image so they can pursue and these opportunities and prosper? Because again, you'll find a lot of young people will self-sabotage because of their self-image.
Yeah, I was a very confused musical self-image. I had two major influences. There was Prince and LL Cool J. So you can imagine how confusing that was.
Two sides of the spectrum, high heels and Kango.
There you go.
Yeah, because both of them was cool. They both were super cool.
Yeah. See, I like Prince because Prince didn't care what other people thought
at all,
and LL was just cool. So it's like you had that. I don't care what everybody else thinks. So I have to fit in anybody else's box.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had LL, who was like, he just was cool. So it's like I had those two images.
I'm trying to gave you a balance, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Gave you a balance. Yeah. Balance the thought for sure.
Right.
That's a good one.
Let's talk about your latest book a little bit. So you have a new book out, Aligning Yourself with the Success You Desire, 13 Keys to Unlock Your Personal Greatness. Tell us about why you wrote the book and what you hope people pick up when they read that book.
Yeah, well, everything that I create is all very intentional and purpose. So we talked about live above the hype, and we helping our young people live above the hype and get this self-image and all of that. Okay, once you get that, the question becomes, now what? So what do I do? You know what I'm saying? I can be motivated and all, but what do I do? So I wrote a very small, practical book to give people keys, young and old, people keys, stuff that I've learned on practical things that are aligned with success. And I'll give you some examples, like something very simple, like time could be spent or invested. So you look at your day and how you spending your day and things of that, and then how you spending your time. People say, I don't have time for that. You have time. It's just, how are you spending it? If you spend 10 minutes scrolling on Instagram, which many of us do, probably even more than that, that could have been invested in 10 minutes of studying a book. Right? Studying success principles or something like that. So I mean, it's things like that where I help people take all the mysticism out of success and give them real practical things. If it's something called the slight edge that I had heard about, to still talking about investing time. If you read 10 pages of a book every day, and I read 0 pages of a book every day, the first day you only read 10 more pages than me. You probably don't have that much of an edge over me. But if you've done it every day for a year, you've read 3,650 more pages than I've read, just by spending that small amount of time to read them 10 pages. So what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? For our success, because success is not about achieving it. It's about aligning with it. You have to be. Another one. And I learned from a lot of people. Another one, Myron Golden. He say, in order to have what you want to have, you must do what you need to do. And that's where we all stop.
Right.
But you can only do what you need to do by becoming who you need to be. A lot of people don't do what they need to do because their mindset hasn't yet become developed enough to do it. They don't even have the capacity to be disciplined enough to do what it takes to be successful, because they haven't developed it, So things like that. Those are the type of things that we talk about.
That's awesome. So what are you most excited about in this season of your life?
What I'm most excited about is getting all this stuff out. So everything I have done has been very organic. I am a practitioner first. So when I wrote Live Above the Hype, I wrote it because I was working with the young people I wrote it for directly. And then it ended up just getting bigger and people wanted it. And that's how it happened. It wasn't, I wrote it, went to a publisher, and then we got it out. We had this big old launch. No, it was literally me working in real time. When I wrote Beyond the Crack Generation, I wrote it because I was working with people who are working with these communities, and I wanted to help them get insight. I never even did a book launch for it. Same with Aligning Yourself with the Success You Desire, and with the Live Above the Hype Success Academy. So what I'm excited about now is God has put on my heart, K-Rahn, I have blessed you to create a lot of stuff. And I love that you create and all of this type of stuff. But an apple tree doesn't bear fruit all year. You know, you just can't keep creating. Get this stuff out. So now I'm getting real focused on having a very intentional plan to get the curriculum, the books, the online courses, get all of that stuff out to the people, because it's actually making impact, and we want to make it the most massive impact that we can make. So that's what I'm excited about now.
Well, that's
impact
awesome.
in the world.
Cool. So with that in mind, I love to ask my guests this question. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be, just like I shared before, how I have mentors who I've never met. I want my legacy to be that Keron, he left an impact. He left a blueprint. He made it count. He was here and he made it count. He left himself no excuses. So I'm not going to leave myself no excuses. I want somebody to see that. He didn't wait for an organization to get behind him. He didn't wait for a publishing company to get behind him. He didn't wait before he had 5 degrees. He didn't wait before he was rich. He used what God gave him and made the most of it and waited for God to bring the increase. And I'm going to do the same, you know. So that's what I want my legacy to be. Make it count. Make every day count.
I love that. I did check out your website. You got some cool merch on there. You know, I saw the Living Above the Hype t-shirts and socks and all that. So where can people find your website and your material, and where can they connect with you on social media?
Yeah, okay. If you go to innersunconsulting.com, everything is there. You know, it'll give you my books. It'll give you links to my books, give you links to, if you want me to come speak, all of that. You can also go to Live Above the Hype store if you want to go straight to the store and just want to go straight to the merch, Live Above the Hype store. And on social media, I'm on LinkedIn, K Vallatine on LinkedIn. I'm also on IG. I'm working on being more active on social media. So I'm at Live Above It. If you go to Live Above It on IG, you'll find me there. And that's pretty much how you find me.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and what you're doing is inspiring. And I pray people will find your content, use it in the communities where they've been called to serve, and make an impact. Because I think we do need to help people begin to see themselves differently, to be able to see that they were created for more, and to go farther and to be more, because God has something special in mind when he created them. So I want people to understand that they do have value. Absolutely.
That's key right there. Absolutely. You have value, right? We want them to know that.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Keron. I'd love you to have you come back on again, and we could talk some more. We only scratched the surface of things we could have talked about. So I'd love to have you on again.
Okay, I would love to come back. I appreciate this platform, and thanks for having me, brother.
Have a great new year.
All right, you as well. Peace, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @bkeithhaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin, or on his website at alightbreaksthrough.org. Thanks again, and tune in next time.
Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to NoahBot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @bkeithhaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin. Thanks again, and tune in next time.